You are a brand new nurse. Heed my warning. Do not fall for the trap of caregiver conditioning. I'm willing to bet that nobody in nursing school and none of your fellow nurses and nobody who oriented you or mentored you or precepted you has talked to you about caregiver conditioning. I'm Jessica Smith dos Santos. I've been a nurse for 20 years. I have fallen into the trap of caregiver conditioning. I have burned out. I left the profession for 5 years and I'm back with so many great tips for you to not become burned out and to enjoy and thrive in your nursing career. Because it's hard, you're going to learn how to do hard better. You are not going to get burned out. So, caregiver conditioning, what even is it? I, funny enough, I was actually researching like why nurses don't invest in themselves. Why do nurses have a hard time spending money on investing in their own personal development outside of academia? Why aren't they spending money on coaching? Why aren't they spending money on courses that grow them personally? But they're willing to invest tons of money in growing themselves professionally, which, by the way, I think is a huge mistake. Yes, grow yourself professionally, but your level of professional growth and the impact that you're going to make will never, ever, ever outgrow your personal growth. So make sure you're doing them hand in hand. Okay. So, anyway, side note, caregiver conditioning. What even is it? It is literally like nurses are conditioned through training, through experience, through workplace culture to be the helper, to be the fixer, to be the calm in the chaos. We are literally the bridge between like the medical system and the patient at the bedside. That's an immense amount of responsibility. But through that, we are conditioned, even if it's subconsciously and we don't realize it, that we are that face. It's like the persona of the nurse in the superhero cape, right? Like when we see ourselves portrayed that way, it feels good on the ego. Let's not lie. Like we're kind of badasses with what we do. Absolutely, yes. And that kind of conditioning that leads us to believe that we swoop in, we take care of things, we rescue people, we solve problems, we are that superhero leads to automatic responses in our personal lives, like suppressing our own personal needs. Like, how many times during a shift do we say, I don't have time to pee? I don't have time to drink water. I don't have time to have a snack. I don't have time to feel my feels right now. That conditioning can lead to suppressing your own personal needs outside of work. If you're like me, I'm a wife, I'm a mom, I have 3 dogs, I have a business, I'm an author, I'm a coach. Like I have all these other things that I have going on. And if I'm not super careful and super aware, I can fall into the trap of putting myself last, of putting my needs last. And it leads to other signs, which I'm going to talk about. So, number one, why does this even matter? Well, caregiver conditioning matters because it is one of the number one causes of burnout, of chronic fatigue, of boundary issues, of moral injury. Like all of these words that you're hearing thrown around now about this trauma that these nurses are experiencing. And I'm not saying that we're not experiencing it because, friend, you heard me say, I burned out and I left the profession for 5 years because I believed that the system, that the medical system, the hospital system, and the profession of nursing was the cause of my burnout. And on the other side of that, I can't tell you how wrong I was. I now know differently, and I'm here to share that with you. So that's why it matters because these are things that you can control. You are not a victim of the nursing profession, and you are not a victim of the medical system. You have so much control in how you do hard and how much you thrive in this profession. And I'm going to give you 5 signs today that you may be falling for the trap of caregiver conditioning. The first is constantly putting others first. Now, obviously, in the workplace, you're hired to put the patient's needs first, right? However, I have to ask you, does that have to come at a cost of skipping breaks all the time, of not going pee, of not drinking water? I would argue that that's complete bullcrap. Like those like ideals are things of the past. There's no reason for you to sacrifice yourself in those ways. Now, I will tell you, there are 12-hour shifts that I don't sit down, right? I am on my feet for an entire 12 hours. However, I drink my water. I pee when I need to. I pause for 5 minutes and I go to the break room and I fuel my body well regularly. Even if I don't get to sit down and take a full 30-minute meal break, I have that control. I don't have to let my bathroom habits or my water consumption or my nutrition fall prey to a system that's very, very busy. Being busy is not an excuse for not putting your own needs first. And what I would encourage you to ask, if you catch yourself saying, well, I can't because, I would encourage you to ask yourself, but if I could, how would I? And that question alone opens possibilities that you might not be able to see if you are feeling overwhelmed. Okay. So if you catch yourself constantly putting the needs of others first, even outside of the workplace, if you catch yourself not prioritizing simple human needs like sleep, rest and recovery, water, nutrition, nourishing friendships, nourishing relationships, things that feed your soul. Like for me, that's going out in nature. It's going out for a beach day. It's connecting with a friend over coffee. Like those are the things that fill my soul that are necessary for me to keep growing and thriving, not only in my profession, but as a human. And if you find that you're constantly putting others first, that's one of the number one signs that you fall in prey to caregiver conditioning. Now, I'll also say this with a caveat. Caregiver conditioning may be something that you came into the profession with without even realizing it. Maybe you were a child who had an alcoholic or a drug addicted parent and had a very unpredictable home environment, and you filled in that role of a caregiver as a survival strategy. Let me just tell you, if that's your story, you are so incredibly brilliant for creating that strategy as a child to keep yourself safe and to find some sense of peace. And I just want you to know that it's not a bad thing. And at this point in the game, you don't need that strategy anymore. It's no longer serving you to keep you safe. And I would love for you to consider that it is safe to put yourself first, that it is safe to say, I have to pee. I'll be right back. Those are very simple things. Now, the trauma side of it, the childhood side of it, that's like a whole nother thing that like requires some definite one-on-one time. But just know that you have permission to explore a different way of being. You have permission to explore if it could be safe to lay down that behavior of putting others first. And remember, this is one of the things that leads to burnout. It's the type of conditioning that leads to you becoming exhausted and overwhelmed and burned out and resentful. Okay. Number two, sign that you're maybe falling prey to caregiver conditioning is that you have difficulty saying no, even when you are exhausted. You have difficulty saying no to picking up extra shifts. You have difficulty saying no on doing just one more task that day. You have difficulty saying no to doing favors for other people, even when you know what you really need is rest. And this is a sign that you just don't have the skill or the confidence in creating those clear boundaries. And if you're like me, maybe you didn't even know where those boundaries were because you were so conditioned to overgive, to push, to push, to push, that you don't even know where that boundary might be for yourself. And that's okay because, friend, that's where I was. That was one of the reasons that I burned out and left the profession. But guess what? I took me with me. And what I discovered in that 5-year break from the profession was that I was not a victim of the hospital system and I was not a victim of the profession. What I was struggling with was caregiver conditioning. And I just needed to learn a different way of being, of existing within all of the roles of my life, not just nursing, but all of the roles. I had to learn how to set clear boundaries. I had to learn and practice the words to say a respectful thank you for thinking of me, but no thank you. I had to learn how to practice being assertive when people who were used to me constantly saying yes didn't receive my no well. Those were things that I had to learn and I had to have support for. So if you find it difficult to say no, and saying no causes you to spiral into this thought process of like feeling guilty and feeling like you should do this or you could do that, or maybe I could, and you notice that you're sacrificing your own well-being, that's another sign of caregiver conditioning. Number 3 is emotional numbness. Now, this one is really hard because it comes as a disguise. So I wrote a book called Shit They Don't Tell You in Nursing School. You can find it on Amazon, and it is also an audio. But I talk about the season in which I was completely numb and how I thought that was a good thing because I was able to detach myself emotionally, and I kind of felt indifferent to patients. I felt indifferent to their suffering, but I also felt indifferent towards my husband. I felt indifferent towards my children. I felt indifferent towards my friends. I didn't feel the depth of that sadness or that frustration or that anger anymore. And I thought that was a good thing. I thought that meant that I was growing emotionally. But what I also didn't feel was the happiness, was the joy, was the excitement for the life I was living. I had become so burned out that I had adopted emotional numbness as a strategy to get myself through. And like I said, this one is tricky because you think, oh my gosh, I'm doing so much better because I'm not feeling exhausted and frustrated and angry and all of these things. But the truth was, I was checked out, not only checked out for my patients, but I was checked out for my life and I was checked out for myself. So emotional numbness is actually a signal that you have conditioning that has gone too far. Number 4, signs of caregiver conditioning is you're using phrases like, I'm so burned out, or you're struggling with things like chronic fatigue and you're tired all the time. You have constant physical and emotional exhaustion, even after taking time out to rest, because you're over giving all the time of your thoughts, of your emotions, of your energy, of your physical, like hands and body. You're just doing way too much. And it's leading you to a place of physical, mental, just all out exhaustion. And in this moment, how to avoid that is to number 1, notice. Again, I share with you that I didn't notice that I was even in this place because burnout and chronic fatigue had become normal. It's amazing what us nurses can go through day after day after day and starting accepting it as normal. We normalize things that the normal human would never be able to tolerate. And that is not a good thing. That does not mean that we have a superhero cape on our back and we're badasses. That means that we're sacrificing ourselves into a very terrible future. So I had the pleasure of working with a nursing student the other day. She came down to the ER to do a clinical rotation, and she was sharing with me that she's having some doubts that nursing is the right choice for her. And she also shared with me that her aunt was a nurse for a very long time. And finally, at 60 years old, she was starting to look forward to retirement. She suffered a massive stroke. And for the last 6 years of her life, she's been peeing in a diaper and she can't get her words out. She said it's so sad because you can tell she's in there. Like you can tell by her eyes and the way that her energy responds to you that she's in there, but she can't speak. And she has no control over her bladder. And through all of those years of putting herself last, of putting her through body through hell, of pushing when she should have been resting and creating healthy boundaries, led her to a point where now she is fully dependent on others. Like she's completely swung the opposite direction. And I share this with you because You are the future of this profession. And the way that we have been doing nursing is not sustainable. It's not going to create a profession that's serving people. And it's definitely not creating a profession of healthy individuals that can show up and serve the community in ways that they need to be served because we are suffering. And I was sharing with my nursing student what's beautiful about like us as in the old generation of nurses who've been around a long time is that we come from a generation of like workhorses, right? Like we will put ourselves through hell. Like talk about the epitome of caregiver conditioning, right? But this next generation of nurses comes with a very specific set of ideals and doesn't want to put themselves through that and they aren't willing to put themselves through that. And I think that the two of us partnering together, the OGs and the next gen, like we have so much power to empower one another to do the hard differently, to do the hard in ways that leave us feeling like we're thriving rather than just barely surviving this profession. Okay, last tip, number 5. Last sign that you may be suffering from caregiver conditioning is enabling dependency in others. Holy crap, right? Like when you are conditioned to be the helper, the fixer, the calm in the storm, you start overdoing for others and you're actually enabling other people to be dependent on you. Now, know that there's also another component of this of like it feeds our ego to be wanted, to be needed, but that's a trauma based reaction. Okay. So enabling dependency in others is not serving them. It's like that verse in the Bible where it says, you give a man a fish, he eats for a day. But if you teach him how to fish, he eats for a lifetime. Stop giving people fishes and start putting a fishing rod in their hands. So, simple example is like doing things for patients that they could do for themselves and fostering a sense of over reliance in that patient. In doing so, you're creating a twofold challenge. Number one, you're creating a whole lot more unnecessary work for yourself because you've made them dependent on you, because you haven't empowered them to have that self efficacy. And number two, you've created a completely disempowered person who doesn't feel confident to do hard things. Now, you could remove this from the context of caregiver conditioning and insert it into parenting, into marriage, into friendship, right? Do you find that you enable dependency in others? Or do you find that you encourage others to do the things for themselves that you know that they're capable of doing? Now, one of the things is I was kind of reflecting on this point as a mother. It takes an insane amount of patience and energy to teach the children how to do their own clothes, how to cook their own food, how to clean the kitchen, how to clean the bathroom. And I spent a majority of their childhood sort of training them in that self efficacy, preparing them to be adults. And guess what? My children are 15 and 16 now, and I never clean my house. If I need a meal cooked, I know that they're going to cook for me. They do their own laundry. They help me pick up the dog poop. If I don't have time to water the plants in the yard, my children know how to do it because I have fostered that skill and that independence in them. I have not enabled them to be dependent on me. They have incredible problem solving skills. And what that does for us is it sets us free to enjoy a relationship as a mother and a son and a daughter instead of me feeling frustrated because they're always needing something from me. I call it breastfeeding. We don't do the breastfeeding model around here. The babies have been weaned. There's no more breast milk. And instead, we all enjoy supporting one another and mommy's not exhausted from trying to make milk for all the babies. I hope that makes sense. Bonus tip. Tip number 6, the bonus tip is if you are starting to feel bitter or resentful, let those feelings be your warning indicator that you may be suffering from caregiver conditioning because you've been putting others first, because you haven't said no, because you're feeling burned out and fatigued, because you're enabling dependency in others. Now You're in a state of being where you're depleted, you're exhausted, you're resentful, you feel angry, you feel cynical towards others, you feel like, um, people are just using you. And I want you to know that those feelings are incredible triggers for you to think, oh my gosh, maybe I'm suffering from caregiver conditioning. Have I been doing these behaviors that are leading to situations, to relationships that are causing me to get burned out? To be that face, to be that helper, to be that fixer, like, OMG, it's exhausting. There's so much that you can do to control this for yourself. And you didn't know what you didn't know until we had this conversation. And it's not your fault. I found myself in all of these scenarios and I had to have support. I invested the money in the coaching, in the mentorship, in my own personal life to become aware of, to learn new skills, to break these habits. And I'll tell you what, friends, my relationships are wonderful. My life is thriving. I am fulfilled and I am enjoying my career in ways that I didn't even think were possible. Because when I was feeling burned out and I left the profession, I had no intention of coming back. And I'm so incredibly glad that I did so that I could be the living proof to let you know that you don't have to fall into this trap. If you have any questions about this, any thoughts, any concerns, any like, oh my gosh, Jessica, I might be falling into this, help me. I'm here for you, friend. You are not alone. And I am so grateful that you chose to step into nursing because someday you are going to be the face of hope for your patients. And I have no doubt that the way you show up because of doing things differently is going to make a huge difference in your personal fulfillment. Much love.